Welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duval, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who's not afraid to take a fire-breathing dragon by the tail.
Tim Longo. I dispute that, and I am afraid of doing that after last night.
Tell us a little bit about that. So, of course, we're talking about Super Mario 64. We might as well let's just go ahead and tackle that. Tackle the end first.
Start at the Omega. Yeah, I almost gave up. I got to be honest. Because I as usual, I didn't have enough time to play throughout the week, so I end up always having to cram in the last few days. So I was up, late. I was probably around 11:30 or so that I got the 70th star last night, and so
already up to the wire.
Of course, that meant okay. Now, am I really going to try to do this? And I've assumed the level leading up to Bowser was going to be pretty rough compared to the previous ones, and to my surprise, I got up there without dying once, which was unlike me for those sort of linear levels. But I think one of the notes I wrote down is I think it is a testament to the game teaching me how to play and improving my skill, because I actually had gone, as a quick aside, I'd gone back to the very first Bowser linear level, whatever they're called, lead up to the boss battle, in which I think in the first episode I mentioned like I died like 20 or 30 times on that thing, and I breezed through that sucker because I went back to get the red coins. So the
red coins, yeah,
and it was no trouble. So clearly I learned and I got better, So anyway,
did you get all the red coins on the lead up to the final battle?
No, I didn't even. Okay. I had 70. I was like, as soon as I had 70, I was like, I'm done with these stars. But yeah,
no, I did, and that definitely added to my difficulties on that. Just getting to them and figuring out how to get to them, and in some cases, there's a whole section that you can actually skip over and not lose any coins. There's a backflip you can do.
Yeah, I did that. I found that just
cool,
on my own. I was just like, what if that's pretty close. What if I backflip? And I wrote that note down. It's so gratifying to find a shortcut.
It was. That's amazing. And I went the other way because I was worried I was going to miss a red coin. Mm-hmm. And there aren't any red coins. And so in the future, I was very happy now. And after I made a mistake and fell or whatever, I was very happy to be able to just skip that entirely, because that was brutal. That little section before that.
Yeah, that one section you skip is really pain.
It's hard. It's really hard. Yes. Anyway, so go. Yes.
So I got up there, and of course they did a great thing. Probably through playtesting, once you finish the top and you get to Bowser, if you lose at Bowser, you just, you're put back at the top of the course. You don't have to redo the course. Maybe that's the case for all of them. I don't think I failed it in the other boss battles, so maybe I never saw that. But then they also give you an extra life right there on that platform. So
yes,
you basically, unless you mess up, you can infinitely stay up there and try. So come 1:30 in the morning, 2 hours ish later, I had fallen. I was just, due to fatigue, I'd fallen off of that top platform because a freaking Goomba knocked me off, which is the most embarrassing way. And then so I had to about 1 o'clock, I had to replay that whole level again. So I wasn't happy at that point. Almost gave up again, but man, that Bowser battle, man, I just throwing him all over the place. And the first two throws I was pretty consistent with, and I had a good pattern where I'd lure him to the side, and I could get him pretty close. But it's that last one where you
need a lot of momentum because the level has broken up, and you are too far away from the spiky bomb things that you can't. You have to
wind
throw them with as much velocity as you have. Yeah.
And when you wind them up that fast, it's harder to aim.
It's very hard to time.
So yes. I think basically I lucked out on the final one, if I'm honest. I don't think I actually did a good job. It just happened to be, in the random direction. Yeah. So 2 hours, sounds like it was about 2 hours for you as well.
It was. I spent a lot of time on the lead up level, as I already mentioned, and then but just with Bowser, plenty of time. I threw him off the edge so many times I can't even tell you, and then I'd try to avoid his different attacks, but pick up some coins because I'd been set on fire or whatever. So it's just a lot of running around, and then I'd mess it up enough that I would just jump off the edge. Like, okay, I'm down to 2 little wedges. It's not worth. I know I won't be able to do it. And I was, in fact, on one. I was down to 1 red wedge when I beat him.
Oh, that's drama,
which is very gratifying. But I was winding up, and I've tried this many times. At this point, I'm like, okay, if this has got to be the time, because I don't want to do it again. And I sat and I just spun and just kept working on the timing in my head of when I was going to release, just counting off like a beat. Which is I think what you have to do.
I think so too. I lost.
I tried a lot of things. I tried listening to see if the audio cue was any help, like if the releasing at a particular time in the audio of the little swoosh that he makes as he swings around. No,
the things that anyone resorts to in times like that, where you're like, there's got to be something I can latch onto. It can't just be this super difficult. Yeah, it's a desperation thing. There's nothing.
It really is. Yes, it's no. There's no. I tried a lot of different things to think about as far as that went, and in the end, maybe I just lucked out too. It's really hard to say. I will say that final boss battle is far more difficult than it really needs to be.
I agree. I think I maybe mentioned it before, but and then what I was going to say about just thank goodness. At the very least, you can indefinitely. Well, I assume you can indefinitely spin.
Yes,
because they very easily could have had a timeout there where he comes to his senses and gets control or something, And so there's that at least. But yeah, the spike was pretty high there. I'm a little surprised. I still give them kudos for designing. And again, I think I mentioned this before, but because I'm playing with the classic, on the N64 controller. The mechanic of that boss battle, because you're spinning and using that analog stick, is just it's built around, for me at least, is built around the controller. This kind of one stick that you're twirling around. So it's just a nice little cohesive little design there. But the level design situation of that just unfair.
Yes, and the speed and timing of it with no real good cueing. Like I said, I was trying to find some cue that would help me time it. And instead I had to sort of invent my own, which I had to basically get better at over time. So one of the things you pointed out already is that the game's really good at training you at the skills the game requires. But not in the case of a boss battle like that, some of the skills you are reusing. You're avoiding things and jumping and whatever and getting around behind him. But that whirling him around thing is...
You haven't had to throw him that far before.
You haven't had to do it like that, and it's... Yes.
I mean, you could have thrown him that far, but you didn't. It would behoove you not to in the previous arenas. So this was a new skill that, I mean, I guess end of the game, I understand. The games were definitely different of that era, but... pretty rough spike there at the end. But I'm glad I stuck it through, to be honest. Because I could have watched it on YouTube or whatever just to see the ending, but it just was so. Again, and ironically, I had given myself a 1:30 cutoff for the most part, and it was like 1:25 in the morning. Nice. Where I was like, "Oh my goodness, thank." So I got the nice line from Peach saying that she's going to make me a cake or whatever the heck was going on there.
We should bake him a cake.
Yeah, man, what a crazy franchise this is. It's just hilarious.
It makes you wonder if that's why Portal has a cake.
Oh, that does. Yeah, that weird CGI image at the very end
of the cake
when you get the end title. It is very Portal-like.
It is.
Oh, that's
now.
a good
Are you
one.
able? Were you able to go back to the menu from that? I just had to turn the machine off. Okay,
Yeah, I just reset.
I wasn't sure if that was a emulation problem
right.
or right because it's a
No,
virtual console.
that's just something that you don't do anymore as well, huh? Like that's just not a thing anymore.
No, definitely not. I mean, I can remember, I guess on the Wii, finishing Mario Kart by getting all the gold cups or whatever on all the tracks and all the speeds, and it gives you a thanks for playing screen, but you can just at that point hit start and go back to the main menu, and you get a different main menu, I think, once you've finished everything in Mario Kart, which is weird. Just like a different background. Anyway, I'm digressing into other games at this point. Let's touch on the few levels up there at the top. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I've been having carpal tunnel problems that have been pretty bad over the last week or two.
Yeah.
And so I did not get anywhere near the 120. I finished at 85. 85 stars, but I did make sure to go into every level at least to get a feel for it and spend some time in it. I think I got 5 out of the 7 stars on the snowman level, which is the
first the snowman land,
first one
Snowman's Land, or
Snowman Land,
or the first one, Cool Mountain.
No, I got all of Cool Mountain by last time, so this is in the 10, 11, 12.
Yeah,
I guess 10 through 15, maybe, or what we
10.
Opened up. 10 is Mr. Snowman, and
for this
last
playthrough.
Yes.
Or, no. Well,
I guess you had already gotten to some of them. I hadn't because I was backfilling all the
right. For this last one, it was only TikTok Clock and Rainbow Ride that opened up. I had already opened Tiny Huge Island, Tall Mountain. I just hadn't gotten any stars in them. I just played them a little bit last time. So it was up to 13.
So I made sure to get a star in each of them. I really like the conceit of Tiny Huge Island, where you can control your size. That was actually really fun. I found kind of a weird star, not the star I think I was meant to find in that one. I don't think it was the first star. I think I got the second star where there's a caterpillar in there who's been
Wigglers.
Wiggler.
Make Wiggler squirm.
So you got that one too?
I didn't finish that one. No,
okay.
He got me. He got you. Okay. I almost got all the red coins under there, but the jumps were ridiculous because he has red coins underneath his cage area. And I don't think I only got 2. No, I think I only got 1. The top of the huge island on that one. I never even found the piranha flower. Pluck the piranha flower. I don't even know where that is.
Oh, I did. I got that one as well. So that you have to start big for, right? So you can choose. That's one of the funny things about this level is you can choose with the castle area. There are these pictures that you jump into, and you can choose one or the other to jump into for Tiny Huge Island.
I didn't know that.
Yes, you can jump into. If you turn to the right, there's one where it makes you look smaller as you approach the picture. That's the one I was
using. Yeah,
and you were small, so you were small.
Yeah.
That's why you couldn't find piranha because you have to go in and be big, so that you can get over to where the piranha is, and then you have to make yourself small by jumping into a pipe over there. It makes you small, and then when you come out, there's a battle with I think 5 piranha flowers that sprout, and you have to jump underneath them and hit them under the chin, and knock them out.
Oh man!
See, it's a weird thing
because I'd found the painting on the right first, and the one straight ahead was not a painting that you could jump through.
Right, not.
So I thought I'd found the right one, so I never even tried the left one. That's interesting.
Yeah. I did love that intro too, though, because if you go to the left, it's like one of those rooms where the perspective is weird and the ceiling is closer to the floor on the far side of the room. So when people stand up there, they look like giants, right? Mm-hmm. So it does that with Mario. So you look really big when you jump into the painting because the painting is so much smaller.
Oh, interesting.
And the walls, right? And the same thing going to the right is the painting looks enormous, and you look really tiny. I thought that was
That's brilliant. I just never turned left, even though I played that level multiple times. How funny.
That's funny. Yes. I just kind of stumbled on that, I guess. I don't, because I went straight ahead and then I came back, and I guess I just tried both sides.
I just
when I
didn't
came
think
back
of it.
out.
Yeah. I just, once I found it, I thought that was the one I was supposed to find. I didn't even think to go. So did you fight Koopa the Quick, which is another one of the stars?
No, I didn't.
I didn't. Found. Yeah. There's an island level that
there's a turtle. That's the Koopa, the green turtle.
Oh, so maybe you fight him when you're,
I think you race him, probably.
Yeah, because I had knocked him out and taken his shell.
In Mario Odyssey, shows up in, I think, basically every level. Once you finish the game, you can go and do a race, and Koopa is organizing it, and you race against multiple Koopas, and there are like 2 levels of difficulty of that. So that's a callback, probably, to this game. So you probably talk to him, and he says, "Hey, you want to have a race?" That would be my guess. I saw that star because it was the next one I could do in that level. After I got the first 2 that I got. So there's a
Koopa in there that I'd gotten his shell from him, but when I was little. So maybe you have to go in there when you're big and talk to him or something. I don't know. The other star mechanic that I was not a fan of was the secrets that some levels have. There's one on that level that I didn't get, where you have to find the 5 secrets essentially, and then they reveal the star. Where you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, that I didn't have the patience to explore the world that meticulously to find them. I got 4 of the 5 secrets in the wet dry world. That was the closest I got, but it's like, where's the 5th one? Like, I just didn't have the time to put into it. It's kind of I
think sometimes they're a little more obvious. The Dark Docks had 2 of those, but they were both involved.
Docks.
Yeah, right. Dire Docks.
Well, you're right. Yeah,
there's one where
those
you fall behind the manta. Right.
I did.
It's very obvious what to do. Yes. Okay.
If they were all like that, that's one thing. But these,
right?
The one in wet dry world, which maybe it's kind of a toss up between that level, Womp's Fortress, and Tiny Huge Island were kind of my 3 favorites. But yeah, if they were all that clear, but the one in wet dry world basically is like you're moving some blocks and hitting a few specific things that, I don't know, just didn't seem fair. It's one of those things that kind of smells like strategy guide fodder, you know what I mean? Sure. Where it's like, I don't know, but like, it's, but we didn't have unlimited time like you might have had as a kid playing this, so it's a little bit different for us.
Definitely. And also at the time there wouldn't have been quite as much pervasive internet.
Right.
Obviously there was some internet. But that would have been frustrating as well. I did, by the way, recall that I have actually finished this game before. When I was on the Bowser approach area, and it had those stairs that appeared and disappeared and became a
ramp
again. When I got to that, I said, "Oh, I remember this." I remember how angry I was at that particular staircase, because I had no difficulty with it now, but at that time I had a lot of difficulty getting up that staircase, and just kept sliding back down, and Darren Stinnett would laugh at me. So
this I was telling, we were talking pre-show about skill. Was I talking about that, or were we talking about that on air? Anyway, I was telling Brett I was impressed with the game, but also with myself when I got to that last Bowser level. I went through.
Yeah, you breezed right through it. Yes.
One crack, and when the first Bowser level up front in the beginning, I had a really hard time with, and then I went back to that level to get the star and had a.
Yeah, you're repeating yourself now.
Oh, am I? Okay.
Damn. Yes, it's okay.
I can't remember what was pre-show and what was not. Yeah, and yeah, that ramp, I just kind of went right up that first time, but I could see how it would be a frustrating area for sure.
Yeah, it never hurt me at all this time, and I had no trouble at all with it. But when I got to it, I said, "Oh my god, this!"
Yeah,
So
pretty
I knew
recognizable.
at that point that I had in fact finished the game before. And I remembered when I was playing Bowser, which I wasn't any better at, as far as I can tell this time, that I had done that before as well. I want to touch briefly on Koji Kondo's music, because we almost never talk about music on the cast, and people rightly chide us for it occasionally in the emails. The music is such a huge part of the Mario experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
Every Mario game, I feel, brings in new musical elements working on the same themes. It's some of the most recognizable music in the video game world, partly because it's been in a million Mario games, but that doesn't make me any less fond. And playing Super Mario Odyssey at the same time and seeing all the various ways that they've taken it in different directions there, including a very memorable section in New Donk City, which when you play this game, I know you will enjoy. Because it is awesome. A really, really great level and area. It's these themes are, like I said, they're some of the most timeless in games. I don't know how you feel about them when you're playing. Does it even reach you?
Well, yeah, it does. I mean, because he's done both Zelda and Mario, that, Zelda is in my soul. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like
That's where she is.
Okay, yeah, very funny. And Mario, even though all I've done for the most part for any of the the main core Mario games is start them and play them for a few hours and then never finish them. I mean, until this podcast, I don't think I'd actually finished a mainline Mario game. So now I've finished 2, which I'm proud of. But despite that, the iconic songs are just. I mean, he's basically the John Williams of our industry, I would say. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, interesting. Yes,
Like
him or Final Fantasy's Uematsu. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Nobu Uematsu, who
yeah, I
does
mean,
the Final
maybe,
Fantasy music.
but I don't think like the reason I say that is I think more like there's probably more casual and maybe even non-gamers who might hum a Mario theme or a Zelda theme. You know what I mean? I
Sure.
couldn't hum a Final Fantasy. Maybe the Halo theme. You know what I mean? Like that's also pretty recognizable to people. But anyway, I just feel like Zelda and Mario specifically, those two. It's like Indiana Jones and Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like they roll off your tongue, especially if you're a gamer. But yeah, they stick with me, even though yeah. And I've
Yeah.
heard rumor of something in Odyssey that is impressive in that way. I haven't had it spoiled yet, but I'm excited to try it eventually.
It is probably what's in New Donk City as far as that goes, and it's terrific. Yeah, no, it's remarkable. They're fairly simple melodies.
Yeah, that's the key.
They're not right, and that has made them infinitely adaptable. And in Super Mario Sunshine, there's often a I don't know, steel drum kind of feel to them. That island.
Yeah, he always have themes of them. Yeah,
And I don't specifically remember Galaxy, but I'm sure there was some twist to the music there as well. And in Odyssey, it involves a lot of the different places you go, and the instrumentation changes, and it's been interesting to see how that flourishes in comparison with the somewhat more limited instrumentation and really just technical capability of the Nintendo 64, relatively speaking.
Well, I think the other interesting thing about him that I think sets him apart as well is that even within a given Mario game, there are probably there's 3 themes that people might hum to themselves, right? There's the core one, there's the one when a time like things are going faster. Any of the linear levels leading to a Bowser boss battle in this game, that's the one I'm talking about. And then
Right.
there's also the when do they play it? There's a third one that's coming to mind that's on the tip of my tongue. But basically the point is like it's not even just the one theme. It's sort of like Star Wars in that way where you have the main title theme and then you have
The Imperial
March,
or,
right? That if you ask somebody to hum a Star Wars song, 50% of the time they're going to hum one of those and not realize which one they're humming, but they're so sticky. And he's just, you hit the nail on the head with the simplicity and the, I think that's the key for him. And when it comes to just like, I don't know, man, I feel like, we talked up front in the first episode of Mario and Miyamoto's influence on the rest of us forever, just across time. And we talk a lot about camera and game mechanics in this game and the way that they've translated over, but same can be said for music, right? Especially in any more fun, like lighthearted game, I feel like everyone's just ripping off Nintendo when it comes to that. And it's his stuff that they're talking about mainly. So.
Right. Absolutely true. And that's probably one of the things about Final Fantasy music. Although I think the da 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 is probably one of the most recognizable little themes. You certainly remember that for Battle Victory.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's pretty recognizable.
But again, that's a pretty simple melody. Some of the more complex orchestration, sure, you're not going to remember. Recently, I've been playing Final Fantasy 15 a bit. This was before my hands started to cramp up, and maybe part of the reason. And you spend a lot of time in a car. I won't go into it, but you can buy soundtracks for the car that are other Final Fantasy games, and just go through as if you have an iPod connected and picking the soundtrack you want to listen to, or just putting it all on shuffle, and you can buy different soundtracks as you go around the world for a small amount of in-game currency. So that you could just collect them all and put on, and you can put them on while you're wandering around. It's a fun little thing because you can also hear that sort of evolution of the music, which I think is some of what's going on in Odyssey at times as well. That you get the old 8-bit, 16-bit sounding music at times in the 2D segments and
callbacks. Yeah,
right, exactly. It's just lovely in every way.
So. Well, I mean, I think the other thing that's just, I don't know why this is just dawning on me now, but to compare us to film, one interesting thing in our history as an industry and medium in the legacy is that our genesis was limited by technology about what we could do with music. You know what I mean? So the genesis of Mario, no pun intended on that. The genesis of Mario, was at a time when the melody had to be simple because you didn't have a lot to work with. You know what I mean? So he had to come up with these really catchy things because he was working on, you'd have to talk about the technology of it, but he's working on chips that could only do very minimalistic things. But because he had that constraint, he had to make them so iconic and therefore keep and retain that throughout the years, even when he could do orchestral, because film always had orchestral, right? You could say back in the silent movie era, they focused on music differently, but you know what I mean, right? Like there wasn't.
Well,
but
even then, they often had live accompaniment at larger theaters and things like that. Sure,
they could use traditional orchestral musical, composition for film throughout its history, and for us, we've had this different limitation that changed that. So I don't know. That just dawned on me just now, and it's kind of
no, it's absolutely true. All right, so there, I didn't want anybody to write us an email and say we were music haters or whatever. We did have somebody email not too long ago and say, "Hey, you never talk about the music," and trying to remember to do that. Let's go ahead and dive into pillars and do that now, and then do feedback in a shorter second segment. What's your number one takeaway?
Oh man, it's I don't know why that's funny to me. It's such an overwhelming game, like I've already talked about how I'm not a huge platforming fan. I'm not a huge Mario fan. I really am happy I played this though, and really enjoyed it most of the time. And we've kind of talked about some of the shortcomings, but all told, just incredible. The main takeaway for me, though, I would have to say, is a clear thing because I've had to deal with it myself often enough, is 3D camera design, and for their emphasis on that. And I wrote a couple notes down this time that I wanted to not forget, and I'm not going to go into detail with them, but the way that 3D camera design works with 3D level design, and some of the rules that they both succeed at times in this game and also fail at. But small examples like the curvature of a hallway, and the way you design the level and flow of that hallway to accommodate and flow with the way that the camera is tuned in its magnetism and it's you know what I mean, and it's
yes, absolutely,
its speed of correction as you're turning him, and how it's very smoothly and seamlessly just tracks behind him, and you don't even have to think about it, right? And still to this day, and I'm as guilty as the next person, we still mess up camera, right? And we still design levels that are not conducive to the camera that is in the game, and
yeah.
And
I remember in particular us having trouble with that playing Soul Reaver.
Yeah. Perfect example.
A few games back, right? Same time period, basically, but yeah.
Yeah, we did. We talked about that a lot, in to the degree where it felt like there were two complete different systems and design philosophies going on there. And we didn't end up getting a guest on for that game. But I have some friends I could talk to ask them, about
dying to know,
about how that was considered or not in that game. But yeah, but just to the degree that they focused on that, and in this game, and as we quoted, I think it was Dan Hauser from sort of that famous quote, that everyone's ripped off Mario and Zelda, and anyone who says otherwise is lying. The camera, for me, man, this, looking back at the time and now playing this all the way through, you can see where people were stealing from. So,
absolutely.
What about you?
Yeah. So for me, I guess one of the things I really take away revisiting it again is just how perfectly this idea of jumping into these paintings and going into different worlds is both a wonderful way for them to explore different play types, because of course some of the levels have sliding or swimming or whatever, regardless of how I feel about any individual one of those, having the ability to do lots of those things and basically take what might have been those 3D experiments that they were doing, finding their way to the camera and being able to showcase them in small ways because of this abstract framing that they did, I think is a really wonderful thing to do. And it also, at the same time, is almost a meta commentary just on gaming generally, that we literally jump into these pictures. They happen to be moving pictures on a television. But it feels like really a meditation on what we do anyway, and what we're doing at the moment that we're playing the game, which is wonderful circularity, but also just has that side benefit of being able to do crazy stuff like the tiny, huge island or the rainbow road floating around, or even some of the things that I'm not as crazy about, but the flying or the swimming. It's nice to see those experimented with. And I think that
just
the hub and
use
right.
Yeah.
And that's partly that hub and spoke design as well that we talked about last time.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The macro design. So I think that all kind of ties together. I feel like had they just taken the Super Mario World approach, it would not have been nearly as successful.
No. And actually, the last note I wrote down for this session, and for all of the sessions, was decision paralysis for me, because it was late. It was late last night, as I mentioned, and I was trying to get that 70th star so I can move on. And those last 3 or so stars, I really had decision paralysis because I needed 3, and there were so many places I could go to get them. You know what I mean? And I was just,
Yes.
because I had all the levels were open to me, and I just had this anxiety of like, should I go play the clock one because I just unlocked it, but it looks really hard, to get even 1 star, and or should I go, and like Rainbow Road, I didn't get anything. I actually got no stars. I only got 1 from the clock. But then it's like, okay, there's this one back in the first snow level that I just was a pain in the butt. So I decided I was never going to do it, but it seems like it's easier than the clock. So maybe I should after all. So I just like, but it was a product of the hub and spoke structure. So that I was able to do that, in Super Mario World, that wouldn't have been an option for me as easily. I could go backwards, I guess, on the linear, path of the overworld map, but it wasn't the same kind of choice, so there's not an analog choice once you get into the level of which star you're going to do. So yeah, that's a good point. The macro, that's why I laugh. It's like there's so many good takeaways.
Yes, no, it's absurd.
The macro,
it is really such a foundational game in that way. You could take any half hour of play and take 100 lessons from it.
Yeah. Each level has lessons, both sometimes good and bad. Like, I actually am surprised to some degree how there's more things in the game that don't hold up for me than I thought there would be, because it is such a
grab bag.
It's a grab bag, but it's also such a key game to our history. You know what I mean? And it should be, but also, and so when you say that about a game, I often think like a Super Metroid or something, which pretty much holds up entirely. I feel like this one doesn't, in some key areas, and so, but that's okay. It's just it was in my head that it was going to be that consistent, but I had never finished it. But yeah, the meta structure, macro structure, definitely a takeaway. Another takeaway that I won't spend much time on is just his core tuning and mechanical, movement and controls is just astounding for the time too. When you have games like Tomb Raider and Soul Reaver that, that wasn't their focus, and I don't think, controlled that well.
No, absolutely. And we definitely spent a lot of time on that. It's funny, a lot of that 2D, all of those 2D momentum and mechanics really carry over. And of course, if you're moving in a line, right, you're effectively already 2D. So it does naturally kind of translate, but you don't think that it will feel as good as it does, especially with the camera being kind of in a different place and everything. And it really does work out extremely well. I wanted to ask you, did you, because of my next point, did you go back and find the green cap? I gave you a little bit of a hint there.
I did. Yes. Thank you for that hint.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't, once I'd gotten the star in that room with the floating, with the water dinosaur, I don't forget the name of those things.
Dolly, I think.
I just assumed I was done with that room, so I never went back to that room, because I was like, oh, I did the dinosaur room, I'm done. So I didn't find that there's another star in there, as well as the door to get to the hat. But yeah, I did go get that. So I had all 3 hats, but I very minimally used. In fact, I don't think I got any stars with the flying hat. I just gave up on that.
Okay.
But the other 2 I used.
But there's one in the the one that you can get in the very first level, Bob-omb Battlefield, is fairly easy to get.
Yeah, I tried, but I couldn't find it. It's weird. I knew.
You just have to go to the island. The island that's floating in the sky.
Yeah, I was up there. Yeah.
If so, there's a cap there. You can get the cap and go in the cannon and get shot through the center of the rings. And because you have the cap, you fly further. And if you get the center coin in all of the rings, I think there are 5 of them. It's one of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 deals.
Oh.
If you get all 5 of those center coins, then a star appears somewhere in the map. You can just go get it. So
there was a hint on one of the signs
at
some point saying if you go through rings, ring of rings or ring of coins.
There you go.
Yeah, but I didn't know what that meant, I guess. So
yeah, you all you need to be is you can just be shot through the cannon. And I did it the first time. I knew what it was because I had gotten it last time I played.
Darn, that would have been an easy one. Yeah, I didn't.
That was an easy one. If you know about it, so you just aim yourself perfectly and you just get them all, and then you just have to land. Yeah, I was curious about that. So the reason why I said that is I did want to bring my one major negative lesson is that, again, variant gameplay from your primary gameplay should be easy. As easy as you feel comfortable making it. That's not a lesson I think we applied to games in 1996.
No, we embraced variant gameplay to make it hard. I think it was the opposite problem.
I agree. And as we're talking about Bowser earlier, I was thinking, and here's just another variant gameplay that's really, really difficult. And it's something that I think that makes that sort of difficulty choice makes sense when you don't have a larger, more mainstream audience, when you're mostly marketing to people who have plenty of time on their hands. I think as time has changed, obviously that design approach has changed, other than in certain segments of the industry and some of those games coming back, like the Dark Souls and Bloodborns and things like that. But in general, in certain indie titles, in general, I think it's a good idea to, when things are different, try to make them a little bit easier. It's a complaint I've
should be an additive variety and distraction more than a extra unfair challenge. And that's the kind of, I think we've talked about this in other series, but that's kind of the curse of the last level of many games, right? Of like, oh, it's the last level, let's mix it up because it's the last level and kind of throw something new.
Yeah, let's make it memorable. And
it's like it ends up
being memorable because it took me 2 hours doing the same thing over and over and over again is not the kind of memorable I was looking for. I'm often perfectly happy with something that I get to the end, and the end is actually fairly easy. If it's different, that's cool. If it uses the same skills I've known, that's also cool. I'm totally fine with either of those. What I don't like is it's horribly difficult and it's totally new.
Easy's good. I think my favorite my favorite, and maybe the lead up to Bowser's last fight is maybe a good example of that, because I found it. I did okay at it.
Right.
Endings of games that culminate in interesting combinations of everything you've done so far, but the combination is in a way you haven't used them. So there's nothing new, but they're using the things you've used before in interesting ways. So you don't feel like you're at a disadvantage. But if it's
I particularly liked finding that shortcut. That felt like a wonderful moment of, I learned how to do this thing, and it made me able to circumvent this other stuff I didn't enjoy, which was very hard to do. Is a great moment, and it comes out of the skills.
So gratifying,
and being able to read the geometry pretty well, which is tough in the sort of primitive 3D. So
I never would have thought to myself that I would have found that when I started this game. You know, the fact that I put two and two together to even find that on my own, because I only looked up one hint for one star the whole time playing, which I was also proud of.
Nice, nicely done.
I did look at a list of the star hints. So I cheated,
the names.
I cheated a little bit, on the star names, because I wanted to look ahead on some that I couldn't see to see if I should skip one, But otherwise, I only looked at one hint. So finding that kind of stuff on your own is sure gratifying, because you're kind of putting all the things that you've learned together to find them. It's like, what if I do a backflip right here? It looks like I should make it, and then it works, and you're just so happy.
Fantastic moment. All right, well, let's take a quick break and then come back, do a little feedback, and talk about our next game.
Sounds good.
welcome back from the break. We got a fair amount of email this time sent into devgameclub@gmail.com, and I threw the first one over to you, sir.
Okay, we have a nice chunky one here. Subject is Mario 64 from Sasha Visari, otherwise known as Truffles Mochaccino. I don't know.
If either of those are your real name.
Yeah. I wanted to somehow rhyme Truffles Mochaccino with I don't know what's real low, but I couldn't think of it at the time. So anyway, she goes by Truffles Mochaccino somehow. Must be the real name. As you said, I'm in this right along with you guys, right alongside you guys. Last night I managed to find my 50th star. And you said this was from last time, right? So
right, this was one I tried to get to last time, but we had read quite a few last time. It was
so she's hopefully farther
keeping
ahead.
up.
Yeah. That was right in line with where we needed to be. So she beat me last time. Good for you, Truffles. This is my first time playing the game, and oh man, that camera! I don't need to tell you two how moody it is. Sometimes I really don't know what Lakitu's. I don't know how to say his name. Lakitu? Is that?
That's fine. Lakitu.
What he's thinking. They've also been there have also been so many times I've made it up onto the apex of some hellish verticality only for Mario to slide off the edge whilst I fall into loud spells of swearing. This may be an issue of inertia and also the directional responsiveness of Mario. Notice how he can turn 180 degrees instantly if you flick the stick just so, but will do a kind of meandering turn with his feet if you don't. I could mention Dark Souls 2 here, which has a similar problem, but I won't. I agree with her on that, by the way. His turning is very interesting sometimes. These are just trivialities. Like that other game, Mario 64's imaginative content more than makes up for things. The whole premise of being in a quiet castle filled with painted portals is just delightful. I can only imagine how a child would have felt about it at the time of release. Bittersweetly, I wasn't one of those children. Back then in late 96, my 12th birthday saw the bountiful gift of a Saturn with Tomb Raider, which I in no way regret. My cousin Catherine and I would have scary sleepovers delving into the subterranean world well into the night. And as I said to Tim on Twitter, it's almost unbelievable that a team of 6 devs in England could have made that with no similar game to learn from in about a year. And even though Katie and almost all of my friends would get an N64, none of us felt like playing Mario 64 together. Perhaps we intuited that it was a game of trials to be overcome alone, or perhaps the multiplayer to be had in other titles was too irresistible. And in early 98, my dad decided we needed a PlayStation, which before the year was out would lead us to Spyro, the game that surprised everyone by how 64-ish it was. Anyway, back to my point, which I do have. I think you two and I are really lucky to be going through this journey almost fresh into 2017. Tomorrow, I'll be 33, and I'm so grateful to be experiencing this. I find myself alternately appreciating every aspect of the game historically, and then being overcome by wonder or delight at some unexpected turn brought back into the moment. Namaste, she says. I do consider myself lucky as well. I totally agree with her. And
I wanted to say we're gendering Sasha as female, and I'm not sure that's necessarily the case. I think Sasha is also possibly a male nickname in some.
That's true. We did exchange Twitter, and now I'm forgetting.
Apologies if we're getting that wrong.
I do apologize. Yes.
It just occurred to me. I don't know, actually. Anyway, go ahead. Yes,
it is a day. It is a day and age when we don't want to make gender assumptions, for sure. To be honest, might have mentioned this before, but I was coming into this series pretty intimidated. I was worried, actually. I had trouble with Super Mario World. And
to be fair, we both did.
Sure, that's fair. But you were coming to this having played it and also confident in 3D platformers much more so, and just kind of knowing a little bit about the structure and just how it ramps up. I was just worried, and I will say the last few days were definitely rough. But all in all, I agree that with the with the emailer that it was a delight and kind of a privilege to play it for the podcast because of what we do with this podcast. Like, to actually, I think if I were to play it back in the day when it came out, I wouldn't have been analyzing it in the same way. I obviously would have taken things from it because we were at Lucas at the time, I was at least in 96. And I remember when it came out there, but I don't think I would have, it's kind of like reading, it's like reading The Hobbit when you're an adult, it's like you get different things from it, and appreciate that. And Tomb Raider definitely it's such a different game for the same year. Yeah, I don't know. But I agree. Definitely good times.
Absolutely. I mean, it was fun for me to revisit, even though some parts of it apparently had forgotten about until I encountered them again. And I think last time I probably got to the point also where I no longer appreciated it and just wanted to put it down and finished it and got it over with. Whereas this time I was definitely enjoying the additional challenge and having the surprise of finding, oh, there's a 7th star, which is getting 100 coins, and having that moment of, oh man, looking at each level differently all of a sudden because of that, and going back and trying to find all of them and really getting in depth with the first at least 9 levels, really 10 because I have almost all of them on that 10th, has been really great. So yeah, for sure, even if it's a revisit for me, it's a delightful revisit. And honestly, I don't think I would have been playing this in 98 probably in 98. I don't think my critical faculties around games had really developed all that much at that point. And I was also playing it more just for fun and not really thinking about it in those terms. We were making Starfighter, so I was playing other games that I was really analyzing, particularly some flight sims and things, and actually TIE Fighter for that matter. So it is interesting to come back to it and turn a real critical eye with years of development behind me, and just having some other sort of stories to think about as far as the N64 goes was really, really fun. Anyway, belated happy birthday to you, Sasha. Because you mentioned that, and I'm glad that you've been enjoying experiencing it alongside of us. So thanks very much. I have one, just again, Mario 64 from Bobby Oster, or possibly Oster, I suppose, if either of those are his real name. Hi, Brett and Tim. I'm really enjoying your take on Mario 64, which taps into the zeitgeist around Mario Odyssey. It's great to hear discussions about how the 3D platformer has evolved over the last 20 years. There are a couple of points I wanted to make given the discussion around level layout and movement controls. One, the star that you select at the beginning of the level actually determines the layout of the level. You've alluded to this with the fact that certain things open up over time. This is directly related to the star you pick. If you pick the first star, everything reverts back to the original state. Due to this fact, there are also some stars on each world that can only be acquired by selecting that star at the beginning of the level. However, most stars are available in all world configurations. Tim was actually correct. Don't pat yourself on the back yet. There's a correction coming. Tim was actually correct about the triple jump requiring movement. Mario can double jump while standing in one place, but to enable the third jump, you need momentum. I'll come back to this. And then he has an anecdote that he was happy to share. He said, one of the reasons that Mario 64 holds a special place in my heart is due to how I first played it. Nintendo 64 launched with Mario 64 on June 23rd in Japan, while the US audience had to wait until September 29th. As a kid in high school, this meant going the whole summer without Mario. I was lucky enough to try the game at Japantown in San Francisco and became instantly enamored. I knew I would have to find a way to play this game during the summer. Our friend and I pulled together and imported a Nintendo 64 with Mario over the internet for about $400. We played the game ourselves until we beat it, and then proceeded to rent it out in week-long increments to our friends for $40 a week. By the end of the summer, we'd paid off the price difference on the import versus domestic cost, and then some. It's easily one of my fondest video game memories of all time.
Wow.
And keep up the great podcast. So, hey, yeah, capitalism. That would have been quite an amazing thing, actually, to be the first person playing it in the U.S. amongst all your friends, especially as a high schooler. Oh, that would have been finger kissy. The triple jump correction here. If you have the flying cap, you can actually do it in place. You can triple jump in place.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, I mean, I kept trying to do it from... You convinced me, and I was like, there's no way. I cannot do this. This is impossible.
No, it's not possible without that cap. But I had just finished the Shifting Sands level, where I had to do that a lot.
Got it.
And so it was fresh in my mind of, oh, yeah, I was just doing that in place. But I did have the hat. So
you're defending your error is what you're saying right now.
I'm not... I don't believe there's anything wrong in what I said. It is possible to do the triple jump in place.
Okay, all right, there it is.
That's not really an error.
Okay, You just an omission of a detail that was important because I literally tried multiple. I probably spent many minutes after this last session.
If it led you to waste some minutes,
it's worth
not
it.
only am I not sorry, I'm actually kind of happy.
Yeah, okay, good one.
You probably felt really bad the whole time. Like, why can't I do this? Brett said I should be able to do this.
I did, literally until just this email. I was like, thank goodness I'm not crazy, or I'm not terrible at doing a triple jump and standing still. So
You are probably both, but
what was he talking about with the selecting stars? I didn't follow that. What?
So if you select, you can select any of the stars, even if you've gotten them. And the levels reconfigure to the state required for that star.
Are you serious? Oh my goodness! I didn't realize that selecting them changed. I thought there was sort of an order of operation thing, but you can't select stars you haven't done yet unless
unless it's the next one.
Yeah,
right.
Interesting.
But you can go back and choose an earlier one. For example, if it's easier if you get the 100-star challenge on that or something.
Right. I never knew that. Oh, right. That's a good one. Okay.
There's not much reason to do it, but you can. So
but like for instance, yeah. But like in the water level, that boat, it wouldn't be there.
Right.
So there might be a reason to do that or not do that. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. No, I did not even catch that. Interesting. Good.
That was a good thing. All right. I think you have the one from Phil. Is that right?
Phil, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Our speedrunning correspondent, Phil Rosehill.
Right. Hello, guys. I'm catching up on my podcast and heard in your first episode, Super Mario 64, that some other fellow beat me to the punch regarding speedrunning the game. It sounds like he referred you to some of the excellent world record progression videos by Summoning Salt, who does Summoning Salt, is that right? Yeah, who does a wonderful job delving into the speedrunning history of numerous games, explaining discoveries and rivalries along the way. With Mario 64, these sort of difficult sequence breaks have led to the establishment of 4 major categories, ranging from finishing the game with all 120 stars down to none at all. I've included some relevant links below. I should also take the opportunity to ask you to remind the audience that Awesome Games Done Quick, raising money for the Prevent Cancer Foundation, will kick off on January 7th. Keep up the great podcasting. Yes, January 7th.
Yes, Phil sent us a bunch of links, which I'll put in. But the star progressions are 120 star, 0 star. There's definitely...
Wait a second, 0 star? What the heck?
So because of certain glitches and weirdnesses, one of which I'm going to describe, and I think it was on Twitter, so I have to, I'm sorry, I'm hunting for the link here. Somebody sent a really terrific video.
It's like out of world stuff, or you get through doors somehow.
There's that. I think it's partly that, and I think there's a way to get up the stairs backwards.
I I'll have to watch them, I guess.
Right, it's crazy. I
crazy.
feel bad now that I can't find this. I'll have to look in my email too. So if I come up with the name, I'll go, oh, the name is. But anyway, the is it this one? Yes. Okay. It's from Audrey Fox, who sent email, but it was basically just, here's this video, and I'll put this video in the link as well. One of the things that is and this game is one of these games that people try to beat in lots of weird different ways. One of the things that people do is what are called tool-assisted speedruns or tool-assisted runs, but generally people say speedruns. People are trying to minimize not just the number of button presses to get certain stars, but the number of half button presses. So if you think about it, if you press a button down, that's half of the button press, and the other half is when you let go of it.
Releasing it, yeah.
So there's a great video that I'll put in the show notes explaining both what people mean by this and the ways in which the world is broken, including because they use floating point math for Mario's position in terms of controls. But then actually use
the F word.
Yes. But then they actually used fixed point math for his position for collision.
The other F word.
The other F word. There's two different ways of representing numbers in bits. One is fixed point, where every value is equidistant. Those are integers typically. The other is floating point, where there is a representation where you lose precision the higher the numbers go, but you can express a much greater range of numbers. Thus endeth the lesson. You can read more about that on YouTube, and that's probably more than Tim has ever heard about it.
No,
in any case,
I've given me that speech a few times, but it doesn't sink in every time.
I was going to say every time I have to explain to it again. Anyway, it is possible, because they remap his floating point position into these, I believe, 16-bit locations, 16-bit integer locations. It is actually possible to build up enough speed so that on his next frame, Mario will move into a parallel universe in which it is the same. You know what? I can't even explain it. But basically, it's another copy of the universe in terms of collision.
Come on. You're making this.
This is a real thing. And people can use this to actually gain height you have to watch this video to explain.
Yeah, okay. That's some craziness.
It is the wildest thing I've ever seen.
Rendering math crazy. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know if do you remember where the boulder comes down in the hazy maze? There's a star at the end of that hallway up.
Yeah, I got it, yeah.
Okay, so there's a way to get that with a half button press. What? And it involves a number of tricks, including the bugs moving you, because anytime they bump you, they move you, and you can sort of kite them and get them to further along, and then eventually you get them to a place. It gets crazier, because then there are tricks for like making that thing actually jump, but then moving while it's in the air so that it will stop simulating and it won't fall, and now it'll have a new height, and you slowly build up its height, and then you go down and you build up this momentum and go into the other dimension. And I
feel like you're speaking in tongues right now.
You have to watch it. It's 20 minutes. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I tracked down Audrey's email. So thanks to Audrey for that. Audrey Fox.
It just shows the devotion to these games. You know what I mean? Like exactly. Somebody, because you can do probably crazy stuff like this with many games, but like the ones that they focus on to find this wacky stuff
are the great ones, usually.
Man. Yeah. They want to keep finding ways to play them,
extend the life.
Enjoyment out of them. Yeah.
Well, it's just amazing, the things like that where it's it turns out there's two different effectively coordinate systems, or representation of coordinates, and the overlap of those makes for interesting things.
Even separate from crazy hacks like that or tool assisted stuff, as you're saying, the one thing that that's definitely the case in the 2D games as well, but I feel like in this game specifically, there's so many analog aspects to the way you can use him, and kind of like just, that we talked about just that one small shortcut that we both happened to find, but there are some other both accidental and just, wacky stuff you can, because these little levels are so tight, but also, very cyclical and multi-leveled, and vertical. You can do, because you can ground pound at the end of a fall to I think, diminish
prevent
or
damage,
prevent damage.
If you time it right. Yeah,
you could do all sorts of shortcuts and skipping stuff, and I'm sure people have found some crazy things with this game in particular, because the levels are so abstract. You can just kind of
absolutely the moving yourself backwards and teleporting through walls as a result, and building up speed, I think, has something to do with that. There's all kinds of really, really wild stuff that are a natural result of the physics and to be frank, the limitations of the time. You wouldn't actually simulate Mario at every point along a line. You'd just say, well, where is he? Does he enter a space that would push him? The walls basically push him, physically speaking. They push him back into the level. If you can get up enough momentum that in one frame you could pass through the thickness of the wall, you go outside the world. I saw another thing just this week, which was there was a star that nobody had figured out how to get in one of the levels. It was under the ground, but people knew it was there, and nobody had found a legitimate, like, you can do it with your hands way to actually get to it, and somebody discovered a way to do it.
You mean like
it was clearly glitched.
121st star?
It wasn't one. No, I'm sorry, a coin.
Oh, a coin. Okay, yeah.
Right. There was a coin that was unreachable, and someone, this is 21 years after the game came out, figured out a way to do it without tool assistance or anything like that. It involved that water plane moving with you. There's a lot of stuff involved in that. Anyway.
Interesting.
All right, I have the next email, and then I think we just have a review. This is from Mikkel Lodal in Denmark. The subject is swimming in Mario. Dear Tim and Brett, if those are your real names. Oh, well played. Well played, sir. At my job, we teach game development. And one of the constant challenges is that when you spend a lot of time teaching and administrating, you find too little time to do actual game development. Similarly, if you spend all your time making games, you find little time to play them. That's a side note. Thus, myself and a couple of colleagues have taken to listening to your podcast as a weekly ritual during our car-sharing commute. Yeah, we're Danish. And quite a few of your little tips and great insights have made it directly into the classrooms. So a warm thanks from both us and our students.
Uh-oh. Good luck with that.
In the Super Mario 64 podcast, you mentioned something I wanted to comment on. I think it was Brett, I'm going to cop and say yes, it was, who said that the swimming levels in 3D Mario games were pretty uninteresting to him and might as well be left out. I've been playing Mario Odyssey with my 4-year-old son, and when he plays it himself, he's always putting on one of the Mario bathing suits and going directly to the Lake Kingdom or the Seaside Kingdom for a swim. I told him about your stance, and he was amazed that anyone could not like it. Why wouldn't he like it, Daddy? Why? So I questioned him on it. Turns out it's because he gets to swim comparatively little in real life. I'm an embarrassed non-swimmer myself, so it's all up to his mom to take him swimming. So the swimming part of Mario games are pure wish fulfillment. This got me thinking about how games that work for children may have a very different palette of wish fulfillment options or requirements than games strictly for adults. Since you've discussed wish fulfillment in depth before, I wondered if you had any thoughts specifically on how wish fulfillment in games and age works together. Maybe even with the other end of the age spectrum. Which octogenarian wishes can the games industry fulfill? Keep up the great work. We'll keep educating the next generation to stand on the shoulders of giants like you two. Oof, won't get too high that way. But anyway. Anyway, Mikkel is a senior lecturer and director of Institute at the Institute for Danish Game Development. Before we talk about the wish fulfillment stuff, I do want to cop to, yes, I said that. I will say, however, in Odyssey, the swimming is much better.
I hope so.
I think there are technical limitations, and honestly, I just don't think it got quite as much time in the original, and in Odyssey, it's I think it's certainly on par with the other stuff. It's not as good as the platforming, but it's quite good, and among the best swimming out there. So it's, if not for the time limit, I would probably enjoy it a bit more. But you do still have or you can possess a fish, I guess, and then it's pretty good. So yeah, it's actually much better. I think the addition of specific buttons that make you swim down or up deliberately, rather than having to rotate yourself and point in the up or down direction, is a huge help. And that was probably the biggest innovation in swimming in 3D games generally. So I've covered that about as fully as I can. Wish fulfillment, octogenarians and kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had both the luxury and the curse to generally only work in within a certain range of demographic for the games I've worked on. You know what I mean? So wish fulfillment takes on a different form for what I've done in my career, even though it's, I'm proud of the length of my career. It's been ironically not wide ranged in its audience types. I actually think it's a vacuum, for a hole for me, that I don't have that experience, because I'm, it's a lot of power fantasy stuff. It's a lot of, 18 to 34, 36-year-old males, unfortunately, and stuff. And I really regret not expanding beyond that. And kids specifically, having a daughter myself, and she's actually not a gamer, I'd say, but we've played games together, and it's been on my mind, I guess loosely, but I haven't actually thought enough about it to really give a good answer, I think, but I think that's why Mario is so universal, right? I mean, we can appreciate it on a different level than a kid can, like a Pixar movie, and they can pull different things out of it, and we can still enjoy it because it has depth and skill, and they can enjoy it because it's just kind of pure joy and fun. I don't know. I'm just riffing now, but
yeah, I mean, as far as an octogenarian, I won't speak to kids because I'm still thinking about it at the moment, but I feel like when I would talk to grandparents or great grandparents, there's a lot of time that they spend in a vanished past. And I feel like games that allow them to re-experience some of those early moments in their lives, right? Because I feel like a lot of how we view the world is formed in that 18 to 30 or even 10 to 30 age bracket of this is what normal is to us. Like your musical tastes and things are pretty well formed by the end of college and might not change dramatically after that. That's not true for everyone, but it's often true. Just as an example. And I feel like something which allows an older person to be in an environment that is comforting in that way would be interesting, especially with the way in which the world is changing even faster now. I'm recalling at my great grandmother's funeral, in her eulogy, the pastor mentioned that she could remember seeing her first car and what a big deal that was. She lived in rural Nova Scotia when she was growing up, and so she would have seen, I don't know, some rambling Ford or something. I don't know exactly. I never talked to her about it. And it just made me think, wow, what an interesting, that's a totally different life to be able to remember the first time you saw it. We see cars. If you asked anybody who's 20, they don't remember the first time they saw a car. They'd guess like, oh, my parents' car or whatever, but that would just be, oh, I'm sure that because they're so ubiquitous, right? So I feel like an experience like that might be a sort of wish fulfillment, a way to look back.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I'm projecting to being an octogenarian, but also just the feeling of being in a time in your life when you're more physically competent. Just because as we age, as a person who's suffering in my hands right now because I'm getting older, it's nice to look back on a time when you didn't suffer in those ways, the aches and pains and what have you. So maybe that too, but
I wonder if VR is going to end up being play an important role in what you're saying. Not as much for kids, but but for the opposite, and
maybe
kind of reliving that stuff.
There's such a technology barrier there that it's hard to say.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, I think the grand prediction for our generation is, and I hear it more and more these days, I feel like, because we're getting older, but I can't wait till I'm in a senior home, because I'm just going to play games all day and everyone else there is going to be playing games because we're all gamers from our generation. You know what I mean? And so by the time we're older, we'll be more open to technology, maybe. But yeah, not of today, not
right.
Today,
yes, I was going to say that's a tough barrier. My grandfather, my father's father, played a lot of games online. Actually, he played traditional games. He played cribbage and backgammon and bridge. So for him, games were somewhat the social outlet, but mostly these are games that he couldn't just pick up and play. He didn't have friends who played lots of games, and so he had the opportunity to do that online. He was like a Yahoo Games guy, or an MSN guy, I forget, one or the other. And he could just any time of the day jump in and play any number of traditional games that he actually studied in quite a lot of depth. So that was also a sort of like he knew how to when and where you want to use the doubling cube and backgammon and things like that. And he would study it. He'd get books out of the library, and then he'd test his theories online and get better at playing. So that's another thing.
I will say in general that it's a really insightful question, especially for someone who teaches game development, because I feel like we've talked about this in the podcast before, but maybe I'm just remembering conversations at work. But there was an era, maybe around 2000 or 2001, 2, around there, where wish fulfillment came up as a major theme, say at GDC or within the sort of conversations that we would have as an industry, smaller industry at the time. But it is a topic that I feel like at the time, at least, and I still don't think we're doing it enough. We don't use that as a filter and talk about it enough. We talk, and I already was guilty of it just moments ago, saying we talk about demographic and we talk about, who our audiences are and why we're going after them. But we don't talk enough about wish fulfillment and why this experience in this game should be made to accomplish a wish fulfillment goal. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I've always found that a fascinating topic, because I think it would yield some better and maybe more interesting results than just saying, "Oh, I want to make a power fantasy," or this is popular in the world right now, so I'm going to make a game version of that. Versus like he was saying with his son, there's a certain group that doesn't get to swim enough, so we're going to make a swimming game. I don't know. That's a harder example, but you know what I mean.
Well, no, I think there's a lot of aspiration in games, and I think we can do better. I think the issue that we often have is that we target those aspirations at younger versions of ourselves, and because we're mostly white men,
yeah, exactly, yeah,
that's a very limiting sort of thing, and you see that going all the way back. Like you play the earliest Ultima games, and it's like D&D meshed with Star Wars. It doesn't make
Lord British
sense. Right, exactly. So Richard Garriott is just at that time playing to his fantasies. I mean, he's only 19 or whatever at the time as well, so they were pretty fresh fantasies for him.
Yeah.
In 1980 or whatever. And I think we've followed that pattern a lot. I think for kids there's a wish fulfillment in competence, because they often feel underpowered, and they are, right? I mean, they're looking up at adults who are bigger and stronger and have all these freedoms that they don't. And I think that's why some of the mobile games target that. I think Kim Kardashian's Hollywood is a great example of a game that just went gangbusters, in part because it had all that social cachet aspiration, whether or not, however we feel about that in particular with respect to the Kardashians or whatever. I feel like there's an aspiration there of, here's an adult living their best life in some way. And that's, I think that's a fantasy as well for a different segment than we usually appeal to. And I think explains a lot of that game's success. So that's another thing. So that's the kind of younger age. Took me a while to get there because I'm on the older end now.
Isn't, and I'm going to admit on air that I haven't read Ready Player One yet, but isn't kind of a big theme of that? Sort of like have you read that book?
I have. I listened to it actually.
Isn't a big theme of that kind of, is that escapism and being something that you're not and
no, that's more like so Ready Player One and what I've heard of Armada are basically more pans to they're more about telling gamers who have learned everything possible about games that they're right, that there's value in having learned all that stuff, like how to ghost Pac-Man and whatever.
Okay.
So it's very reinforcing of that particular demographic that we already kind of discussed. So
it's maybe the opposite that
you're right, for good or ill. No, it's definitely the hero's journey, but written against retro video games. All right. Okay. So anyway, hope we touched on some of that stuff there, Mikhail, and keep it up. We should connect you with Dan from Guernsey College. Maybe you can get a little exchange going with your students.
Flattered and happy that we're maybe helping somehow. It's great that there's tidbits. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we have good stuff to say, but I'm never sure. So it's nice to hear. That it's useful to some.
All right, and thank you. I think we'll finish off with a review through Apple Podcasts.
The one I have?
The one you have.
Okay. Informative and entertaining from JDog33. I don't know. I just love it. That's JDog.
Totally a real name.
What's the radio guy in Fallout 3? Something Dog, right? What's his name?
3 Dog.
3 Dog. Yeah, see, JDog 33. I was close. 3 Dog coming at you. Okay. He says, I started listening to this podcast about a year ago, and since then I've listened every single episode and thoroughly enjoyed each one. The hosts are a delight and more entertaining than they should be for seasoned devs anyway. That's good.
Grumpy old man.
Yes. I absolutely hate being freaked out. But hearing these two talk so passionately about Silent Hill 2 has made me want to turn out all of the lights and go for the Maria ending. Geez, what can I say? Can't recommend it enough. Yeah.
Thank you very much, J-Dog. I hope you did go and turn out those lights and go for that Maria ending, because that is one creepy game. That
game is something else, yeah. I'm glad I own it now, because I do think I will go back to it eventually.
It rewards multiple plays. Since this was my second time playing that game, it was pretty great. Anyway, so we're getting long here, so let's quickly wrap up. Thanks for the emails to devgameclub@gmail.com. We love having them, and of course, we also love ratings and reviews because they help expose the podcast to new listeners. And if you don't want to do any of that, go ahead, tell a friend. We'd love to have that too. So 2 things. One is our next game. And Aaron Evers, our friend from Houston, Texas. Hope you've all dried out down there, Aaron. He gifted us a copy of Anachronox with a couple of other games a while back. And that's one of those games that just falls into blind spot for both of us. It's not a game that I think either of us could say has a lineage of any kind in terms of impact on the industry today. But it is interesting because it is a Western developer's attempt to present what they enjoyed in JRPGs. And so since we have played a JRPG and a Western RPG on the cast, it seemed like an interesting thing to give a look at. And it's totally a game that I wanted to play when it came out, and just for whatever reason did not get around to. I don't know if we were shipping a game at the time or what. If I just ran out of time to get to it. But it's been one of those that always was like, I wish I had gotten around to that. And so we're going to take the opportunity to do that now. I will revise this on the Twitter channel at Dev Game Club if I determine this to be a bad idea. But looking it up a little bit, since neither of us have played it, it seems like a good thing to do is just play the opening section, which is called Bricks, I guess. We will see, but we will start playing that for next time. You have any thoughts about that game? I don't know if you had any kind of memory of it.
I think no. My memory. So it's 2001. It came out, and so that was Halo that year. We were, I guess, we were probably just getting started on Republic Commando, right? Or we were early.
Would have been Jedi Starfighter finishing in Starfighter shipped in February of 01. Jedi Starfighter shipped in March of 02. So we would have been either
so that's probably
Starfighter or in the midst of a pretty rough year on Jedi Starfighter. That was a pretty hard project just because of the short time.
I remember a friend of the podcast, Reed Knight. He's a big fan, and it wasn't, and it was in the Ion Storm era. So that's something I think we'll talk about. And it's to be honest, like Brett and I were talking about it, as far as that era and these types of games and Ion Storm specifically, probably Deus Ex would be the game we should play at some point related to that era that I would have played before this one. But it's such a fascinating mashup that I'm really excited to see what it's all about. And of course, Tom Hall was the director, so and he just he's back at id, and he helped ship Doom recently and stuff. So there's definitely some interesting folks have worked on this game, and it's just it's been an intriguing thing and a bit of a cult favorite, I would say. Reed being kind of that example of somebody who loved it. Jeff Green, infamous.
Yep.
He's also was always a fan of it back in the PC, CGW days and all that. So.
Right, sure. I definitely remember it having strong reviews and stuff, and being one of those that just got away in terms of time and things. So, and at that time, I was actually shifting more towards console play as well. So it was a time where I was playing all the Final Fantasies and things like that, and getting a PS2 and having just shipped a game on it as well. So. It was a time where my own habits were changing quite a bit. I was playing fewer PC games as well, so it's kind of an interesting time. Maybe we'll talk about that too. What was the other thing I wanted to say? Oh, the other thing I wanted to say was, and I just want to get folks to send thoughts to the Twitter or to the mail address, is that it's coming up on the end of the year. Last year we did sort of a roundup where we tied in and had quotes from some interviews and things like that. We've had a few interviews this year, and so there is material to pull from if we want to do that again. But if people had other ideas of things they thought would be really fun for that week between Christmas and New Year's, I would say we're open. I don't know that we'll get to all of them, but it's certainly something to think about. So if you have a thought, go ahead and throw it at us. Otherwise, you may just get some of that looking back type stuff that we did as well last year. So I'm happy to do either. Okay. Of course, you can find us on Twitter at Dev Game Club. I'm at Brett_Duville, and he's at
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week with Anachronox Part 1. And for now, good night.
Good night.